Today I'm talking with Tony Billmeyer, a former account executive who made the switch to cannabis when Missouri's medical market was just getting started. Before that, he spent about 8 years working at big ad agencies like BBDO, Goodbye Silverstein, and Eric and Kalman. Now, he helps run Show Me Organics, which owns 5 Blue Sage Cannabis Deli locations and some of Missouri's biggest cannabis brands like Vivid, Buoyant Bob, and Missouri's Own. And their marketing, it's been a huge success. They've won 9 Clio Awards. 2 of their campaigns were named the best cannabis marketing of 2023 by Adweek, and their top brand, Vivid, has absolutely taken over the market. Florida Kush became the #1 selling flower strain in the US. Florida Kush Batter was the #2 selling concentrate in the entire company. On top of that, Tony has been recognized as one of St. Louis's Business Journal's 40 Under 40 and made Adweek's Creative 100 in 2024. I'm super excited to bring Tony to the call because you're going to hear a bunch of things about branding, marketing, and how to stand out in the cannabis industry. Welcome, Tony, to the show. And now let's get started. Tony, thanks for hopping on the Dispensary Marketing Podcast. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So what are your keys to running a successful dispensary?
So I'm our chief marketing officer, so I look at this mostly from a marketing perspective. And, I think our biggest things that we have to focus on are differentiation and having an experience that connects with the consumer. So Blue Sage is our dispensary brand. We have locations around Missouri, about 5 right now. Really started in like rural Missouri with 2 locations kind of in the Ozark area. And so our experience and our ownership team's experience before this was in pharmacies and local pharmacies. So there was a specific effort and, a goal to really build the dispensary in the model of the local pharmacy. So we've kind of done that through a few things. It's understanding the customer and building, the ideal cannabis customer shopping experience. And so we do Deli style, which is an option in Missouri, but it's not required. And so I think it's probably less than 7% of the dispensaries in Missouri offer Deli style. And we've really kind of focused on that as a unique point of difference to really, we rebranded from Blue Sage Cannabis Company to Blue Sage Cannabis Deli to help kind of reinforce not only the tangible Deli style flower offering, but also the intangible component of this kind of corner store vibe where you expect someone to kind of know your name when you walk in, and you're gonna be treated like a professional dispensary would, or a professional pharmacy would, and really like feel like you're part of the community and not just a customer.
Right. So you mentioned something that I think a lot of people try to say, and I know you breezed over it, but it's a very important thing. It's understanding the customer. And we spoke about this on our first initial call about how you came back from, more so the branding side. But then on marketing, for everyone who's listening, from a marketing standpoint, there's really 2 battles. There's a direct response marketing side. So if you're looking at marketing from a sense of like, here's a coupon, here's a discount, you can directly attribute this coupon code to somebody purchasing. And then you have the branding side where it's like, oh, I really like the look and feel. There's a reason why you buy, a Nike t-shirt over a Walmart t-shirt because of the brand. It's who the brand is associated with, right? So kind of bringing it back to exactly what you said, understanding your customer. How do you go about doing that? Like really figuring out like what your customer likes and then how you can then present your business to them so that they can associate, let's say, a positive emotion towards what you're selling?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's definitely something that there are levels to, right?
Absolutely.
Like and I think what we were capable of doing and able to spend, basically like afford at the beginning is different than what we can do now, 4 or 5 years in. So This upcoming quarter, we're really going to dive into some primary research and start to get to know our customer even better than we do now. But where we started and kind of how we've built to this point is through customer surveys, through actually spending time in the dispensaries and talking to customers and getting to know them. But I think there's kind of 2 questions you ask in marketing, right? It's like, where does your business come from today? And what is the biggest growth opportunity moving forward? And so I think we've got a pretty good grasp of our customer, and they're different by store. So we have, we kind of, we create these consumer personas and these archetypes of customers. The biggest things to know about the cannabis customer is that it's a journey, and typically people who have more years of experience, shop very differently than someone who's new to the market or spending 1 year in the market. And so there's this gradual progression from, potentially a casual edibles buyer or a vape buyer to, a bulk flower buyer to a concentrate buyer. And, it's not a linear journey. Everyone's is different and everybody kind of takes a different path.
Yeah.
But once you get, in one of our primary archetypes, and, we built the dispensary for people who love and know cannabis to begin with. And one of our archetypes is that expert shopper. And we know quite a bit about them. They're more inclined to buy an ounce of weed over an eighth of weed. They're more inclined to, visit less often and make bigger purchases because they're sort of treating this more like groceries at this point. They're budgeting a certain amount of money for it every month. They know basically what quantity of product they need to get them through a certain time frame. And so it's understanding that customer and talking to them. And obviously, I think the other thing in cannabis that's different than traditional CPG that's really interesting and has been a fun kind of learning for me is, if you were to take, let's say, laundry detergent or toothpaste or, another commodity, if you are to run kind of like big sales and deals, there tends to, if you zoom out far enough, you tend to just be discounting product that would have sold later. So, somebody who's going to buy 6 packs of Tide detergent is probably not going to buy more Tide detergent over a 1 year period than they normally would, but they're just going to buy it in the time frame that the sale is running. That's very different in cannabis. And part of the reason is there's this just like psychological feeling of like, if you have it, you can smoke it. And so people tend to consume more when they have more on hand. And then second to that is tolerance goes up. So especially with something like edibles, your tolerance changes quickly. And, even within a month or even within a week of starting to take edibles, let's say every night for sleep, that dose might change pretty quickly. And then it gradually progresses. So one thing, we've noticed is, yes, there are understanding, basket size and number of visits and all that. And that is important, but it's more important to get underneath that and understand what the psychology is of that's driving those trips and those baskets, and to try to kind of speak directly to them. So, without giving the whole playbook away, that's kind of, how we look at it.
A lot of times I talk to, kind of clients, and, a lot of the main metric I think a lot of early and new dispensary owners look at, especially if they're not, coming from the business side of things, more so, hey, we got a license, how do we just sell as much as possible? It's like the metric that they only really take a look at is the sales velocity metric. It's like, we brought in X amount of sales, but if you provided a 50% discount, obviously you're going to bring in more sales, right? Just the whole supply and demand thing, right? Now, there then comes on the other side to where, yes, you get the benefit of increased tolerance, you get the benefit of increased consumption, but you also get the detriment of customer purchase behavior now changing to discounts only. How do you typically deal? And again, you don't have to reveal the kitchen sink, but kind of keeping that top of mind. How do you try to maintain that level of sales velocity so that you can increase purchase products, so that the tolerance can increase, so that people can consume more, but not having them only come and purchase on Friday when you have a 15% discount? Because as you said it before, they probably would have purchased it anyways. They're just now kind of waiting to purchase it because, the 15% off or whatever it is.
It's the right question. So, I think there's a few things here. So like discounting kind of focuses a little bit more on changing behaviors, right? So like if we're running a discount, we need to be thinking about what behavior specifically we're trying to change. So let's say, there are these signals, right? Of like, once somebody has been purchasing an ounce of weed for whether it's a week or a month for a long period of time, it's likely that concentrates are going to be a good next step for them, because it's just more efficient. And, the quality of the high kind of takes them back a few years, winds back the tolerance clock a little bit. So when we're running really big discounts and deals, aside from 420 and the days where we really just have to compete, and basically it's table stakes or deals, when we run other big deals, it's focused on these kinds of signals where we can try to transfer one person's shopping habits, one type of customer shopping habits to another, and grow their, and another one would be A lot of heavy flower buyers like gummies, but don't really buy gummies. They'll have them, they'll take them if they have them around, but that's not part of what's required for them to every month. So, running things like a trial with a new brand of gummy, or, a buy X amount of flower, get a free single gummy or something like that, helps to change those behaviors. So to answer your first question, which is, how do we compete without running discounts? That's where the differentiation comes in. That's where branding our dispensary as the Cannabis Deli. And if you go to cannabisdeli.com, that's our website. So we're really trying to own and be what you think of as Cannabis Deli. And so not only does that translate to making sure that the bags that they take home reinforce that they got the cannabis, they got deli style flower, and giving them kind of these signals throughout the store of, making it feel like it's a more fun experience and you get to watch them weigh it out in front of you, so that when, they're down to the last eighth or gram or whatever their habit is to start thinking about buying again, they don't have to go play the game, And I think that we have to acknowledge as dispensary operators that there is this game that customers play of like, okay, when I'm getting close to the bottom of the bag, I'm going to start scouring the 4 or 5 dispensary menus that I usually go to. Our goal, by really owning the deli style and making it very advantageous for you to buy in bulk and discounts on half ounce, ounce, etc., that you don't really need to go play the game. You don't need to waste your time sort of sussing out the deals, because you know that we're going to treat you right at Blue Sage.
Yeah. You said at the beginning, you articulated it much better than I did in terms of the discounts, but when you're looking at customers, you either want them to purchase more frequently or you just want them to purchase more, right? And kind of what you said before is that like somebody who's purchasing an ounce knows that ounce will last them for X amount of time. They're not going to purchase more flour, right? So I always say, if you want to increase that basket size, you need to now cross sell. Because if you have the person that's just purchasing flour and then you introduce them to an edible that they like, their basket size also increases, right? I had another call with another, he was a data analytics guy too. And one of the metrics that he was looking at was percentage of basket size per category, because you can only have a limit of each category of everything that you can have. So you have a theoretical total basket size limit if somebody were to just purchase everything to the max limit as possible. So looking at the metric where you take into consideration what is the total theoretical basket size and how do you also approach that as best as you possibly can. So it's like if you have somebody purchasing an ounce, maybe they hit whatever, like obviously depending on state and compliance, let's just say 1 ounce is the limit of what you can purchase on flour, right? So 100% out of 100% of flour is the maximum, but there's still 0% out of every single other category out there, right? So instead of even squeaking out the last 30%, let's say somebody purchases, whatever it is, half an ounce, and then that's 50%, right? It's, it makes sense that you can go ahead and start cross-selling people. And what you said about using discounts to change behavior that you want, instead of using discounts to change behavior to just increase sales velocity, I think is fantastic. That's
and
awesome.
I appreciate that. I would add too, on that end, a lot of those state regulations that cap how much you can buy as a customer don't pertain to non-THC products. So there's still cross-sell opportunities with glass, papers, CBD, etc.
Yeah. Now, obviously you're on the marketing side of things, so we don't need to deep dive onto exactly how the dispensary got started, but I would assume you had a bunch of assumptions about how you should market the retail store before you did all the surveys, spoke to the customers, actually got into the trenches, right? So what did your perception of marketing look like for cannabis when you first entered into this world? Because obviously you came, from let's say a less regulated and a compliance heavy industry to what it is now. Like, what's changed from where you started?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the biggest revelation I've had is like, as a pure brand person, I used to work at creative agencies, and as a pure brand person, it's very easy to take a stance of discounts are the devil, stay away, don't discount. But the reality is, and it's as much from the customer surveys as it is just the realities of production in the business, is like, we have a agricultural product that goes bad over time, and like not that much time. So as part of this, it's like, yes, it's true that we don't want to be the discount store, but especially with deli style, where we can actually, this is probably one of the biggest benefits of us running deli style is we get to monitor the flower that's going out the door. And so if something comes to us that doesn't look the way it should, we're seeing that before the customer does. Whereas if it comes in opaque black jars, we're kind of just stuck selling with, and we're relying on the customers to tell us, so we're fortunate that we have it set up this way. But it, it plays into this kind of where I was no discounts. It at least allows us to do it intelligently, where not only is it just date received, but we can actually like monitor freshness of products and keep, and so one of the ways we've really made this work for us is, I tell people that, the deli style allows us to use the whole cow kind of thing. So not only are we selling A buds and shake, but we also have, B buds, we have trim. We can really sell every type of flower. And so that allows us to service the specific types of customers that might be different by store. And so, one of our stores is in a rural location where we have high volume visits with low baskets. It's a lot of people coming in and buying a gram at a time. And they would rather buy 5 grams over 5 days than to buy a quarter that might be the same price. Just certain behaviors are specific to certain locations. And so when we have aged product, that location appreciates the discounted flower more than any other place. And so, we've kind of turned one of our stores into an outlet store. And that's allowed us to really, service different customer bases differently based off of their preferences.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem isn't the discounts themselves. It's about the value associated with the discounts. So if customer A comes in and they're getting a 30% discount on a bag of flour, right? And they can't tell the difference of, like you said, A tier flour, B tier flour, and let's say C tier flour, right? And they just think every single time they're getting A tier flour, they're going to wait for that 30% discount. But if you have the discounts in accordance to the value that is provided based on the grade of flour, then the consumer then makes the decision whether or not they want the premium, mid-tier, or the lower tier product based on what they need. And it'll make more sense because the customers who do want, like you say, the expert purchasers, right, are going to be the ones that are going to decide which ones they want, probably the A tier, whatever it is. So I think that's awesome.
I think I have another just really, just as you were talking, made me realize it. Another thing I didn't realize about cannabis, even being what I considered myself an expert before I got into the industry from a consumer standpoint, one thing I didn't sort of think about in terms of from a brand perspective that is true is the strains are essentially sub-brands, but also brands unto themselves from the cultivators. And so, like, in the same way that Pinot Noir is its own kind of brand, that all the different wineries across Napa grow differently and have different takes on, similarly, so too are these strains. And you have fans of strains just as much as you have fans of brands. And so one thing we've kind of done strategically as part of that understanding and that customer, focus is made sure that the brands that people really love of flower, we have gummies, we have vapes, we have concentrates, and so we have hash rosin or live resin, of every type of form factor you could imagine under the Florida Kush, which is the number one selling strain in the state. And so the halo effect that provides and helps build the brand of Florida Kush just as much as it builds the brand of Vivid is essential, because it's really, it's not everyone smokes flower, not everyone takes gummies, not everyone does vapes. So bringing everyone into the same ecosystem of brands and, what matters and what we're talking about, I think has helped us tremendously from a wholesale perspective.
Yeah. And look, brand association is a super powerful thing, right? Like if you're now associating yourselves with brands of, again, the higher tier, if you will, then your company itself, and I mean just any dispensary out there, cannabis or non-cannabis, to use the Nike example, it's why, when they go and, they have LeBron and Michael Jordan, like you associate, hey, I'm boys with LeBron and Michael Jordan, right? Because I'm wearing Nike. Mm-hmm. So I think the brand association is powerful. And my kind of, crystal ball future hypothesis is that like, it will only get more and more important from a brand's perspective, not just for the dispensary, because if we're talking about whenever it might happen, the whole federal legalization, however many years you want to kind of guess it's going to happen in the future. With that, though, will also come a level of consolidation and also open market to a lot of bigger players that have a lot of deeper pockets than, I think a lot of people have right now. And the differentiating factor will be the brand. It's like, I want to go to, Blue Sage because they have this deli style. They've been servicing the community for the past 15 years. I don't care if Amazon comes in and provides this crazy thing. The brand is really what's going to make the difference between people staying alive and not staying alive. But on that side as well, I would say from a legal perspective, brands, the cannabis industry is still in the baby stages, I would say, right? Like, it's not even federally legal. Taxation's still a problem. Banking's still an issue. We're still babies. But the brands are also babies as well, right? You have your number one sellers in the States, but there's no established hierarchy of here's the Louis Vuitton of cannabis products, here's the Gucci, here's the Walmart, here's the Nike. And I think over time it will be very interesting as kind of consumers start consuming more cannabis and stuff like that. Then you have your, Pinot Noirs and Pinot Grigios and all this stuff. And then you have your sommeliers and stuff like that. Anyways, not to ramble on, but
no, I think we've seen that hypothesis play out already in 4.5 years of the Missouri market, where, okay, so we were the fastest market, maybe has been broken now, but by the time we went from from med to rec, we were the fastest to make that transition after original legalization. So we had not the same time in market to seed the market and to have people understand products and brands, and still in just such a short period of time, the market has spoken, and there are certain brands that can sit on the top shelf and a bunch of brands who thought they could who can't anymore. Yeah. And so while I agree with you that will crystallize even further over time, I don't think it takes all that much time for the premium brands to rise to the top, to be validated. And, the stores want to have a top shelf brand that delivers on the top shelf promise that people keep coming back to. And so when a brand comes in and tries to eat at that shelf and it doesn't work, or consumers don't come back for it, I think it turns pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think absolutely. At the end of the day, product reigns supreme, right? If you take a look at the kind of consumer general lifestyle, let's say you did pre-stuff, you had your plug. Hey, John, you got some stuff for me? Yeah, $10 a gram, and then you just took what you could get. Medical, recreational. Okay, maybe I'll test out this pre-roll. Okay, good. Okay, now it's all right, now, let me go flower, let me grind it up myself, let me learn how to roll. Okay, I've been doing this pretty consistently for the last little while. Okay, I feel this way when, consuming this strain. I feel this way when consuming this strain. Oh, it's not going from I don't like just the highest THC thing. Oh, what are terpenes? I love the way that this, and then it just kind of evolves and grows over time, right? So, exactly what we're talking about, I think, from the butting heads of, brand versus a direct response. I think everyone starts out copy, a direct response, and then they kind of go to the brand side so that people can end up coming in. But at the end of the day, a good product's a good product.
Yeah, and I think that's our biggest point of difference is your final statement there is, product reigns supreme. Yeah. And so Blue Sage is, we have 5 Blue Sage stores across the state, but our Vivid products and our Boy and Bob products are sold in 100 and probably just about almost all the dispensaries in the state, about 95% of the dispensaries. And so a lot of people in other places are, driving far distances to find our Vivid products. It's what we hang our hat on at Blue Sage is not only do we have the best prices on our own products, but we're the place that has the direct access to what consumers want the most.
Yeah, which is ultimately what you want. Running a dispensary is harder than ever. There are competitors popping up all over the place. So to help you with this, I've talked to 100 dispensary owners from coast to coast, and I developed this 6-stage marketing plan to help you increase your online orders, increase revenue, and also help you have a lineup of people outside your door. So if this is something you want, please check out the links now. So let's talk challenges. What are your biggest challenges and what are you doing to overcome them?
Man, rule changing, just like goalpost moving, I think is the theme of the market, not just in Missouri, but overall. And the biggest change we've had, which is unique to Missouri, and Missouri is a success story in a lot of ways. One way that may be something to avoid that we've done here is in that transition from medical to recreational, our regulations have become more stringent, which is is the opposite of what just about every other market sees. Is, usually you see kind of a loosening of restrictions when you finally get into rec market. For whatever reason, our packaging got more stringent. A lot of the rules at retail got more stringent, and so for example, we were selling all of our flour in clear jars. Again, going back to like understanding the customer, you want to see what you're buying. Shopping with your senses, it's just like produce. You want to be able to put your eyes on it. They came in with a rule right when rec passed that we could no longer do that. We had to put everything in opaque packaging. I don't think that that's to the consumer benefit at all. I think that our effort towards transparency, understanding that there's going to be slight light degradation with flour when you have a clear jar, but we talked long and hard about this, and we realized like that gets trumped very quickly by the ability for the customer to know that what they're buying is what they believe is the product. So we really wanted to have that transparency, but that was stripped away. Another thing that we used to do is in the clear jars, we have sort of a terpene wheel that we put on the tops of the jars that explains with color how dynamic that strain is, what terpenes are in it, which is more prominent, etc. We've since gotten the state to okay that as an addition, but when we made that transition from clear jars with terpene wheels to opaque jars, they weren't letting us do that. So at first we had to launch with a completely different package, which is just like, marketing nightmare of changing, who you are. And, as it always happens, you just kind of got to roll with the punches, and the orange jar that we put our flour in has become kind of known and iconic in the market. And so now our whole, we've shifted and are making kind of iconizing the jar itself and making that kind of part of the cannabis culture here in Missouri. So that is more of a wholesale challenge, but from the retail standpoint, when those rules went into place as well, we had our compliance team, I want to say, submitted something like 65,000 submissions for approval, because not only did we have to submit every new strain, like what the packaging was going to go out in, we had to submit each SKU. For Deli style, we had to do that by all the weights too. And so shout out to the Show Me Organics compliance team, Kate Wise and Mallory. They, without people like that, we aren't able to deliver on this, superior customer experience. So it's a lot of things you don't think about.
Nothing to do with the actual business itself.
Exactly. Just making the state happy so we can keep doing what we want to do.
Yeah. And it's super, and look, I think this could be a complete, like a separate podcast in itself on like, just like overall regulations. Why are we making these changes? It's just like, you wouldn't go to the grocery store and buy mystery meat that you can't see like, it's super silly, right?
And I think the thing that's most frustrating about it is like, I understand the intent of consumer safety, and that's what we were trying to do with the clear jars and the terpene wheels. You know what I mean? That's where it's frustrating, is like, I know the goal and I know the intent. This other thing does it better. This, as marketers and as people who understand cannabis, I want to know if there's what's on the flower. I want to be able to see it.
What am I buying?
See the trichromes. I want to see how beautiful the buds are and all that. So anyway, that's we got to play by the rules, and so we've become come into compliance and all that, and it's all worked out.
We've been talking marketing, but overall marketing mix, right? So I know, Stand, amazing products, kind of amazing branding, Deli style and stuff like that. What's your general process to get kind of new customers in the door and then also kind of keep them coming back in?
We try everything. And so like, I would say that, I know what my ideal media mix would be in a world where we can advertise everywhere. I don't know what my ideal media mix is today, because it's different than 6 months ago, because now we can advertise on TV all of a sudden in Kansas City, which is very cool. And so every day it's changing, to say the least, but we try everything. We've done everything from cinema, movie theater advertising, to direct mail, to, literal couponing and punch cards. And, we've really done kind of run the gambit on things. And I think that, there's a lot of overlap with grocery programs on kind of how they get people, in the door and retaining customers and things like that. So there's some overlap there, but I think there is no ideal media mix, because the demographics and the customers change with every location. That said, we have sort of an ideal in our mind, and I think that ideal top line will be a lot more, kind of tier one media, meaning billboards and television advertising and what we call above the line. So right now, a lot of what we're able to do in terms of email blasts and newspaper ads and magazine advertising tends to be so sparse that we really are competing with below the line messages, with 1999 eighths and things like that to get people in the door. But that's not our goal, and our ideal media mix is kind of dependent on who will have us, from a cannabis standpoint.
Right. Fair enough. What would be your advice, for a dispensary owner? And again, doesn't necessarily have to be the owner standpoint. It can definitely be from a marketing standpoint with all the learnings and stuff that you have. What would you say to variable X dispensary owner sitting across from you that you can provide the most impactful piece of advice to?
You need to be able to articulate your brand, your company, your dispensary's unique point of difference in a single sentence. And if you can't, or, in 20 seconds, if you can't, you need to get clear on that, because it's probably that you are choosing too many masters or you have too many priorities. And so I think, the Deli style, there's trade-offs with every path you take. And so naturally you're going to want to capitalize on the speed model and the bulk model. And, they're all competing. And so I think the important thing to do is know that that's always going to exist. There's always going to be this push and pull with different priorities and different focuses, but there always needs to be sort of an overarching who are we and why do we exist kind of feeling. And, for Blue Sage, we think that folks just need like a really legitimate but not pretentious place to go buy cannabis. And so, we really try to kind of make our, we call it the corner store vibe. That's core to our Blue Sage, ethos is, feeling like it is normal for both the lawyer or the grandma who's coming in to ask about edibles for the first time and the home grower who's been growing for 20 years to come in and just chop it up with us, because that's the type of place we want to be, so it's like, a welcome all, but we know that we know our stuff and we're building this for, the experts, but we're willing to, have that conversation with everyone in between.
Right. To kind of piggyback on what you were saying, I think a lot of times from especially a new business owner standpoint, it's hard to think about kind of long-term metrics, right? It's like, obviously we want to build a great brand. Obviously we want people to come to us, and, no matter what demographic you are, what industry you work in, we have an open and friendly environment, and, we're more than happy to serve. But in my experience, obviously building that brand and that equity within your community is a longer term thing. So maybe not even tactically, but mentally, how would you say you deal with long-term versus short-term results for, like a business owner?
It's a good question. So I think like philosophically, from a marketing standpoint, a lot, you've heard the idiom, like the medium is the message. And so in the same way that Rolex wants to be at the Masters, we want to show up in mainstream places that, are not putting cannabis off in the corner to the side. And so, from a marketing perspective, I really try, and we optimize for strategies that allow us to do sort of permanent things. And I think that like there is a well-worn strategy of cannabis brands basically taking the spots that will have cannabis brands. So that's like concert venues. That's, it's a lot of like live event type things.
Yeah.
While, I understand the value in that, I think it's really hard to build a long-term brand. It's a really expensive way to build a long-term brand. Yeah. And so rather than doing that stuff, it's like we went through this thought process of like, what's the sort of like permanent version of doing that thing that just, kind of goes at odds with the feeling that this is a fly-by-night industry, that this thing could fold up overnight. We really want to feel permanent. So like when we go make signs for our dispensary partners, we make like super premium, neon or metal or, like really nice signs that will last forever. But in the same way, like the concert thing, like our Buoyant Bob brand is all about fun. And so concerts would be a natural place for us to show up, but we don't have the budget to sponsor every big concert in Missouri over the next 7 years. So rather than doing that, we launched Buoyant Bob as a Spotify artist. And so Bob, and then we took, that was to celebrate legalization in Missouri. And then every 420 since then, we've gone and remade the song in a new genre with another artist from Missouri, or who has a tie to the brand. So awesome. Those things you can go find on Spotify. They still exist. They're still racking up listens. In the same way, our parent company is called Show Me Organics, and being born out of the pharmacy, really has given our founders a unique perspective on the opioid epidemic, and especially cannabis as a potential solution to that. And one thing, we've acknowledged as we were trying to kind of figure out how to push that cause forward was the fact that all of the opioid awareness initiatives, the biggest ones over the past decade, have been federally funded by the government. And so there's no mention of cannabis whatsoever. And so rather than going and sponsoring, just one thing, we really wanted to put on people's brains that there's a core problem here with not considering cannabis as a potential solution to this massive problem. And so, there's overdose awareness and opioid awareness days in late August and early September. And so the past couple of years, we've released, 2 years ago, it was a spoof on a pharma ad that looked like, happy hunky-dory couple spinning around, but it was really hard-hitting, copy and voiceover about opioids and, how detrimental those can be to you. And then this past year, we released, it's called Taste Your Own Medicine. And if you go to tasteyourownmeds.com, you can see the work there. But we really had, our founders are Jess and Leanne Dickerson are two of our founders, and it's a family company, but they're like people you'd least expect to be kind of driving this cannabis initiative forward. And thus was a very nice sort of perfect way for us to tell the story of no, these people have seen a unique perspective. Not only has Leanne seen from the dispensary or from the pharmacy to dispensary side, but Jess was somebody who personally, was adamantly against cannabis his whole life, had a terrible accident, lived in pain for about 20 years, and then tried cannabis on vacation in Colorado and had his first full night of sleep in decades. And so it's this is emblematic of the transition we're trying to have happen all across America. And so we bottled that up, and we made a kind of docu-style video of it, but that's something that will live on. Hopefully it impacted people last year when we released it, but also hopefully more people are seeing it.
Absolutely. I think to taper off what you said, a lot of kind of the things about legalization of cannabis, it initially started with the whole medicine piece. Now it's kind of turned into something a little bit different: licenses, money, lawyers, and all these compliance stuff getting ahead of itself. But the medicine, especially in those states that had a medical piece to it, you can see. Even when I talk to people, they can say they still relate to it as a medicine, right? We have this medicine to do this. And then, in different places, oh, well, let's try and make as much money as possible, right? Again, probably another podcast episode, but I think that's, you kind of nailed it. It's that at the end of the day, you want to make sure that your company stands behind something that is truly meaningful, because then that will also truly resonate with the people who, have an emotional stake in exactly what you're saying, right? So,
I think too, part of what's inspired that feeling of or just fear of feeling like we're gonna fly away in the wind is also that I was in California when that state went from medical to recreational, and so I saw the brands and the money that was spent in that first 6 months was just astronomical. It was crazy. I was in advertising at the time, and I worked on Golden State Warriors accounts, so I was very intimately familiar with what a billboard in San Francisco costs, and then to watch Ease take over the entire city with every bus wrap and every billboard, it's oh, this is big money, know? And then having that go away really quickly, I think gave everyone in the market and everyone in California felt oh, these people are not serious. This is not a serious industry.
Yeah, exactly. To end off on a lighter note, we have as I mentioned before, a question from the previous guest, and then you can also ask a question for the next guest. And Sam Torkelson asked from Gallatin Valley Organics. He asked, "How are you in service to your staff?"
I bring a little bit of a different perspective coming from marketing world, and we've really tried in a lot of ways to bring people who are interested in marketing up through the company. One of the ways we've done this is to not really be tied to any specific structure of the team or specific strategy, knowing in fact that if we build a successful structure and strategy, it's probably going to last a year, and then everyone else is going to copy it, and we're going to need to redo it. And so, one of the things we've done is early on, we, saw the importance of being in the dispensaries physically with pop-ups and having tables and doing the, everyone's done this, the whole rigmarole of getting in front of the customer and telling about your brand and your products. So we built a network of people across the state who were doing pop-ups every day, in every corner of the state. And over time, especially as we became one of the top selling brands in the state, we weren't really telling anyone anything new, and we were seeing more and more people come into the dispensaries already having their orders placed online. There's a lot less questions to bud tenders. There's a lot more just like transactional orders. And so we've evolved. We've taken that team, we've kind of evolved it into what was a field marketing team to a customer success team. And so instead of popping up and having that kind of experience, we're making sure that the bud tenders are educated and making sure that the bud tenders have access to the information they need and are answering the right questions. So
right.
Question. To the question, I would ask someone, I think a fun one at least might be to think about, like, if your business had let's say a $5 million injection of capital, what would you do with it? How would you grow your business to an optimal size using that capital?
I like it. I love it. I haven't had a question like that before, so I think that's a really awesome one. And lastly, where can we find your company? You can plug Blue Sage, plug Show Me Organics, plug it all.
Great. Yeah. The holding company is Show Me Organics. So showmeorganics.com is going to have information about the whole company and all the brands. But the campaign we ran that I'd like everyone to check out is tasteyourownmeds.com. And, from the Show Me Organics page, you'll be able to navigate to vividcannabis.com, to cannabisdeli.com for Blue Sage, and to missourizone.com. So we have all of our brands have, unique pages and identities, but you can navigate there from showmeorganics.com.
Fantastic. Tony, it is clear you're an absolute savant at marketing. I don't know if anybody would really catch on to the small things that you're saying, but it is absolutely noticeable, at least, if you're in the marketing space. So for anyone who's still listening, please go back and listen to everything that Tony's saying, because what he's saying will absolutely skyrocket your business. But aside from that, thank you everyone for still watching. I'm your host, Brandon Kwan, the host of Dispensary Marketing Podcast, and I'll talk to you guys later. See you.
Thanks.
Hey, according to YouTube, this is the best next video for you. Go ahead and click it now.